There are a ton of big-time rookies in the 2025 class, but the running back spot still seems to be a bit wide open. While there were some huge names in the first couple of rounds, there's typically a running back that goes in the late rounds that blows up every year, and I think this year it could be Devin Neal. Devin Neal was one of the craziest stories in this class, as going back in time, he grew up in Lawrence, Kansas, and he was in the shadows of the Kansas football program. They had seen their darkest period ever, but Neal became one of the top recruits in Kansas football history, became the best running back in Jayhawks football history, and now goes to New Orleans, where he has a chance to become a steal for them. In today's video, we're going to continue my Rookie Spotlight series, as we're going to talk about Devin Neal. We're going to go through his story, how he changed the Kansas football program, and how he could do it the Saints. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about Devin Neal. So in order to understand how we got to this point, we first need to go back in time. Devin Neal played high school football just a couple of miles from the Kansas Jayhawks campus as he attended Lawrence High School. He said, quote, "I've known from a young age that I love football, but football is not my only calling." He said that one day he wants to be able to help kids as he grew up in difficult circumstances and wants to help give inner city kids opportunities that they would not normally have. Going back in time, his mother recalls a time when Devin was playing youth football and they were running after practice with the Lawrence Eagles. He was one of the first ones to finish, and some of the teammates behind him were fighting hard to get to the finish line. His mom said, quote, "He saw some of the bigs were struggling, and even though he was exhausted, he got back up and went back there and ran with them because several of the players wanted to quit." You guys obviously know that he became a star at Kansas in the future, but looking back in retrospect, it'd be easy to assume a kid like Neal, who grew up locally in the area, always had his mindset on going to college at Kansas, but that was wrong. While there were photos of him as a child, especially one with him and Andrew Wiggins, it was not a foregone conclusion that he would go there. His parents ultimately thought he was going to leave, and it wasn't until he was much older that he took the recruiting process seriously and actually gave Kansas a fair look. His parents said he wanted to go see the world and not stick around town. He eventually blossomed into both a football and baseball star at Lawrence High School, and as recruiters started to come his way, Steve Rampy, their head coach, remembers advising Neal at one point not to tell recruiters he wanted to play both football and baseball. As many of you guys know, that can hurt your chances as a recruit, as a lot of schools just want you to focus on one sport. Rampy wanted Neal to have the opportunity to see where he could go just based on football, but that really wasn't something Devin wanted to do. Neal said he was upfront with the schools and told them he did not want to go that far away from Lawrence, and he was just upfront with them. And he also told them about baseball. His coach said, quote, "Neal wanted to be honest with them all, and I respect that and respect his wishes, so that's how we did it. But who knows where he would have had the opportunities had he not said that." He said that Neal was a very rare once-in-a-lifetime type player, and during his junior season, Neal ran for 1,699 yards with 32 total touchdowns and 516 yards through the air. He was wanted by a lot of big-time schools, but where would he end up going? Well, because of the football and baseball combo, it seemed like he was down to Iowa, Kansas, and Oklahoma State, and he had a big decision to make. He was also academically sound, as at one point he had an opportunity to play football and baseball at Princeton, and this put his parents in a difficult spot. He said privately they felt like they were idiots for not pushing him to go to Princeton because that's an unbelievable opportunity. Neal would eventually make up his mind, and he committed to play football for Les Miles in Kansas. But shortly after, he parted ways with the university in March and was placed on leave for some nonsense that he committed as a head coach. It didn't really stop Neal though, as he was still committed to the Jayhawks. Why did he want to go there? Well, he said, quote, "I love this city, I love everybody in it, my family is here, my friends can come to the games, and I just fell in love with the coaching staff. I get to play both sports here, and it's a perfect opportunity for me to keep climbing and get to where I want to be." Lance Leipold was eventually hired as Miles' successor, and he was very supportive of Neal trying to play both sports. He felt very strongly about his decision to stay committed to Kansas and bought into Leipold's vision, despite him not being the coach that really recruited him. He had plenty of other looks, as Notre Dame offensive coordinator Tommy Rees texted him and asked him if he was still solid with Kansas. The same kind of stuff happened from coaches at Iowa and Oklahoma State, but he stayed true. He became the top-ranked high school football player in Kansas for the class of 2021, and also the number 2 high school outfielder in the state. During his senior season, Neal ended up rushing for 1,327 yards and had a grand total of 22 touchdowns. When Neal committed to the hometown Jayhawks, the Kansas football program was as low as it had ever been, but he wanted to change things. He said it was dreamlike, because he's now going to be on the field and not watching, and he wanted to turn the program around. According to 24/7 Sports, Devin Neal was a 4-star recruit, the number 14 running back, and the 212th best player in the class of 2021. So how did he do down the street at Kansas? Let's take a look. Obviously, Kansas does not get a ton of big-time recruits, so he had plenty of hype when he arrived. The team hadn't had a winning season since 2008 and had won no more than 3 games in a season since 2010. The season prior to his arrival, Kansas had won 0 games. This was really bad, but Neal would eventually make waves as a true freshman at KU. He'd score his first career touchdown in Week 2 against number 17 Coastal Carolina and had his first 100-yard game against Duke. He was off to a solid start, and then against number 3 Oklahoma, he had 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. He continued to get better and better, as to end the season, he had 143 yards and 3 touchdowns against Texas, and then 59 yards and a touchdown against TCU. In total his freshman year, Devin Neal ran the ball 158 times for 707 yards and 8 total touchdowns. This was an incredible freshman season, and in total he started 8 games. He also went on to play baseball that spring, and going into 2022, Neal would see his dream come together. The Kansas Jayhawks would end up starting out 5-0, and Neal was a big part of that. He had 4 touchdowns in their first 5 games, but after a loss at TCU, the rails sort of went out from under them. They did lose 6 of their next 7 games, but Neal still went nuts. In one game against Oklahoma State, he ran for 224 yards and a touchdown, and also had 6 catches for 110 yards. He also went for 190 yards against Texas Tech and had 2 touchdowns in the Sunflower Showdown against K-State. He helped Kansas get to their first bowl game in forever. Neal ran for 1,090 yards and 9 total touchdowns. He finally helped Kansas get back on the map, and he said, quote, "I always had that dream of changing the program around. People called me crazy, especially when I committed, and it's really special to be a part of this turnaround and be one of the top teams in the country." He would become a preseason first-team All-Big 12 selection and was the only returning 1,000-yard rusher from the Big 12 a year ago. In early 2023, Neal really took off as he ended up having 5 touchdowns in their first 3 games, and he helped them beat Nevada, Illinois, and Missouri State. Kansas once again had a good season, as he would have 154 yards and a touchdown against UCF, 112 yards and a touchdown against number 6 Oklahoma, and then to finish the year he was a touchdown machine. He had 2 of them against Iowa State, 137 yards and a touchdown against Texas Tech, 138 yards and 3 touchdowns against Kansas State, and 106 yards and 2 touchdowns against Cincinnati. The guy put up ridiculous numbers in the back half of the season and helped KU get back to a bowl game. This time they would finally win, as they beat UNLV 49-36, and Neal had a crucial touchdown in that one. In total, Neal finished with 1,280 yards and 16 total touchdowns. He was named one of the nation's top 100 players in 2023, and he had a decision to make. Would he go off to the NFL, or would he return? He ended up deciding the latter, as he returned to KU, claiming he had unfinished business, and was ranked as one of the top returning players in all of college football. Neal ended up having another incredible year, as he went for over 100 yards in each of their first 4 games. They would beat Lindenwood in Week 1 before they would drop 3 straight close heartbreakers to West Virginia, UNLV, and Illinois. This was a major setback for KU, as they were not able to figure things out until the end of the year. The losing streak would continue at TCU and Arizona State, and they'd finally get their second win of the season against Houston. Neal had 2 touchdowns in that one. They lost a 2-point heartbreaker to K-State before they then had one of the craziest stretches in Kansas football history. They went and beat number 17 Iowa State, knocked off number 6 BYU on the road, and then came home and beat number 16 Colorado. The Jayhawks had beaten 3 straight ranked opponents, and Neal had nearly 400 yards and a combined 7 touchdowns in those 3 games. He even broke the all-time rushing record against number 17 Iowa State, and this was a huge moment for him. Coach Lance Leipold said, quote, "I'm very happy for Devin and all of his teammates who have been a part of this all the way through." If Kansas could knock off Baylor in their final game, Neal would have a chance to go back to his 3rd straight bowl game, but unfortunately they'd lose 45-17, but he went for 133 yards and a touchdown in what would be his final game in a Kansas football uniform. In total, Neal finished with 1,266 yards and 16 total touchdowns. As I said, he became the all-time leading rusher for Kansas football, and he went down as a beloved player. One coach even said Neal has a future as a college football recruiter, as he helped KU football recruiting more than any other individual apparently. In total, in his 4 years as a player for them, he finished with 4,343 yards and 49 total touchdowns. The guy is definitely a star. He's considered to be a day 2 or day 3 draft pick. Eventually, the New Orleans Saints would draft him as they needed some depth behind Alvin Kamara, and they would draft him with the 185th overall pick in the 6th round of the 2025 draft. On paper, that definitely looks low, but I don't think Neal really minds. He's been doubted plenty of times in his career, and I definitely think he's going to make an impact for them. Obviously, they have Alvin as their starting running back, Kendre Miller has battled injuries, Clyde Edwards-Helaire isn't all that good, and then they have Jordan Mims. None of those guys are that fierce to me, and Neal I think has an opportunity to become the second string running back in his rookie year. At that point, it doesn't matter if you're taken in the 1st round, the 6th round, or being undrafted, Neal will have a fair shake at having an NFL career, and I think the Saints are a great organization for him to play for. I don't have that much more to say about him and the Saints, but I think it'll be a good fit, and he definitely has an opportunity here. He's one of those recruits that actually truly changed the face of the program, and he left KU in a much better spot than when he arrived. Personally, I think he is one of the coolest stories in this year's draft class, but what do you guys think? If you're a Kansas or a Saints fan, what do you think of Devin Neal? How do you think he will do this season? And what other rookie should I cover next? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out one of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.